Are you ready to join me in transforming fear to freedom? That's the objective of the show. Are you ready to explore with me and my guests? Are you ready to get into the deep and play? This is where it's at, and that's what it's all about. No medical advice here. Use discernment and decide for yourself if the information is right for you. All views and opinions expressed on this show belong to the individual and are not necessarily shared with the producer of the show. Want more details? Go to letsgetrealchattinwithcatherine.com. Now let's get real and have some fun. Who are we going to explore with today? Come on with me and let's get into the deep. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Get Real Chattin with Catherine. Today I'm going to be sitting down for a chat with Tracy Jennex, who is from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And for those of you who are not aware, I'm going to give you a little trivia today because there's a song, I don't know the name of the artist, but it's called Canada is Really, Really Big. And you know, it's true. And I've lived in many places in Canada and travel to many more, but this is very lovely for me to be connecting with someone really across the country. If you don't know Canada, I'm going to just fill you in a little bit here. I am on the west coast, not the coast, but the second province to the coast. So British Columbia is the west coast province, and then it's Alberta. And then it is Saskatchewan and Manitoba, which are considered the prairie provinces. We have more of a foothills, mountainous terrain, so rolling hills and so forth. And then as you get into Saskatchewan and Manitoba, it's more flat. And then Ontario, it becomes more rocky, the Canadian Shield, and then and forest trees and so forth. And southern Ontario has a lot of farming and agriculture. It's a little bit warmer as you get closer to the United States, which we share the Great Lakes as a border there. And then you get into after that we have another major province, which is Quebec, which is our major bilingual province. Primarily the focus actually is in the language is in speaking French. So because Canada was founded by the England and France, and then had a little war, and but you know, we've kind of learned to get along, although that has been a contentious point for some time. So we have a lot of provinces where we have bilingual people, 2 official languages in Canada, French and English. And then, so Quebec, and then we have the maritime provinces, which are near the Atlantic Ocean. So we have the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and then in the what was called the maritime provinces, we have New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Cape Breton Island is part of Nova Scotia, although the people living there often call it's Cape Breton Island. And then we have Prince Edward Island, and which is Anne of Green Gables, for those of you who know a little bit of the history. And then we have Newfoundland, which is between the mainland and the ocean, and then you have Newfoundland. So it's kind of off by itself and isolated somewhat, but many of you have heard about Newfoundland after 9/11, when a lot of planes landed there, and the people there were so gracious in accepting and helping the people that were stranded. So Canadians are awesome people, and I'm very proud to be one of them. And we're not perfect, but there's just awesome people everywhere. We also have the Northern Territories, which we have the Yukon, and then Northwest Territories, and then the newest territory that was created not very long ago, Nunavut. And that is, it spans the northern parts, but also the Hudson's Bay and that whole area in the northern area. So just so you know a little bit. So she's, Tracy, my guest today, is on the other side of Canada, at least 3 hours away, and we're connecting to have a chat about something that I have been really wanting to chat about, and that is Reiki. And she is a Reiki Master and Teacher. She also does a radio show with her sister, so we're going to chat about that a bit too. this is fun, and I love to throw things out to the universe, kind of saying, you know what, I really want to talk to somebody about this, because personally I have had many Reiki sessions. I have a really great friend who is just awesome, and helps me a lot in that way. But there's a lot of people who don't understand what's going on, and I really think it's beneficial to have the information, and then people can make up their own minds whether it's right for them or not. So that's why I wanted to have someone on the show, and nobody better than a Reiki Master to tell us what it's all about and how she came to practicing, and her journey, and what she loves about it. And you know how it goes. We just follow spirit and see what wants to be revealed. And I know we're going to have fun. So I'm really looking forward to it. Tracy Jennex from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Let's get at it right now. Welcome to another episode of Let's Get Real Chattin with Catherine. And my guest today is Tracy Jennex from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. My quest for finding someone to talk about Reiki on the show, I didn't know Tracy until we made this connection, and actually we connected through her sister, and Tracy and her sister have an online radio show, and which we'll talk about in a few minutes too, because that's very cool. And what amazed me was that I'd been sort of in the back of my mind saying, I really want to talk to someone who is really knowledgeable about Reiki. And Master Reiki or Reiki Master is, exactly what I was looking for, but I didn't really know anybody specifically. And then all of a sudden, through the synchronistic events that happen, I'm connected with Tracy in Halifax, and I'm in Alberta, which I think is so cool. So welcome to the show, Tracy.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for having me.
It's my pleasure. And before we get into all the Reiki talk, because I can't tell you how passionate I am about having you on the show to be able to share this, because so many people use the word, sort of know what it is, and then some people even experience it. Myself, I go and have Reiki when I just feel like I really need that attunement. But I want to know a lot more about it, and I think you're the perfect person to tell us. But I want to go back to, how did you, what was your desire? What started you on this path? And, is it, because sometimes in families, it's just a natural thing that people have these abilities, but was that what it was like for you, or?
It was definitely through, it was a development. So the way I got into Reiki, when I was around 12, I remember watching a show that explored the mysteries of the world. And one of the segments was a child, a little boy, had actually cut his finger to the point where they thought it was severed. Anyways, the mother was holding her hand over his wound and was kind of hovering around, sending these mysterious healing energy into her son's finger. And of course, when they arrived at the hospital staff were completely shocked that the child was not crying. He was very calm. And then when they took him in for surgery, the moment he got out of surgery, of course, they were able to save his finger. The mother again started this mysterious hand movement around his wound, and the doctors were shocked that not only were they able to save his finger, it healed a lot quicker, and there was very little scar tissue. So, and of course, that the mystery was, well, how did his mother do this? And I remember when I was 12 thinking, I want to do that someday. Now, jump ahead, you kind of get busy with life and get into the ego and all that good stuff as you grow up. And I was in my last year of university studying a business degree. And my sister, Kelliena, who's a psychic here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, I was really trying to figure out who I was and what I want to do with my life, because I was still not sure. So she directed me to one of her friends who was a Reiki Master Teacher. And I went for my first Reiki treatment. And I went up on the massage table, and I remember laying there for about 20 minutes thinking, I just wasted my money on this treatment because I wasn't feeling anything. But it was almost like the moment I said that, I started feeling these sensations of, the only way I could describe it was heat and vibrations, something that I've never had occurred before. So by the end of the hour session, I remember getting up and saying to Sheila, tell me how to do this, because this is what I want to do. And that's really where I started.
Wow. That it is pretty profound when you have that feeling. And I know from my own experience, there's been times I've been on the table and I'll say, and I can hear, because the woman that I work with, she also does some shaman work. So she has the drum and she's doing, and I'm laying there and she's had me roll over from my front to my back and whatever. And I hear the drum and it's like, I'm thinking, jeepers, we just started. And then I'll say to her, gee, I was awake the whole time. I was there in the room the whole time. I was totally aware of everything you were doing. She says, you were so gone. You weren't even, and it's like, really? Oh yeah. She said, you left like a few minutes into it. And so there, there's those two awarenesses that happen sometimes, when you're having that experience. And she was aware of certain things that I wasn't maybe even willing to. I'm not sure what that is, but I love the way the feeling of heat, and like that's something that people who aren't familiar with what is Reiki, because mostly you don't have to touch the person at all, right?
No.
Right. So that's, yeah, because important information. Yeah, I like that you explained those sensations, because that's and the fact that that mother had her hand over the child's hand to help with the healing. So did you come to understand what that woman had done? Was she, because as you were saying that, I'm feeling like the energy was breathing life into the tissue so that it wouldn't die, as it had been severed from the life force, but so she was sending a life force energy into the tissue. Would that be a fair understanding?
Definitely. Definitely. And I believe what they called, if I remember, I think it was either healing, it was definitely the light coming through. And also I felt to the mother's love for her son also would have amplified that healing session. Mm-hmm. But the beauty about Reiki is that when you do experience Reiki, it's a universal energy field that comes through the Reiki practitioner. So it's not actually one thing to keep in mind when you do go for a Reiki treatment. It's not actually the Reiki practitioner's energy going into the person. They are a catalyst for the energy to kind of come through, and it's between the universal energy and the person's energy field that will direct the person's treatment. So, Catherine, you mentioned that when you go for a Reiki treatment or energy healing, you lose sense of time, and that's very common because we think about time as linear, but when you're doing working in energy work, there's really no sense of time. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what, and a lot of people who meditate, do yoga, they'll say the same thing, or qigong, that the sense of time is really just, it really changes when you get into energy work.
Yeah, it totally disappears. And I think for me, because I meditate, I've been meditating for about 10 or 11 years. And I meditate for at least an hour, sometimes more a day. So my body is so trained to, unless I tell it like when I go to bed at night, I usually meditate at some point during the day. And then before I go to sleep, I'll meditate for another 15, 20, I don't know, half an hour. And then it's like, I know there is a certain point, it's like, fine, I'm done. And I will roll over. But I have to make the movement of rolling over. Whether I sleep on my back or not, I have to do that. Otherwise, my body thinks I'm still meditating. And sometimes I'll be like, about to recline. And as soon as my head hits the pillow,
I can feel the energy start zipping through me. It's like they were waiting for me, whoosh, you know. And so when I get on a Reiki table, it's the same thing. So I'm really not all that surprised that when she says you were gone, it's like, yeah, because my body is so trained now to do that, right? That it would just leave. But for a long... Yes, go ahead.
Oh, and that's, you can almost tell as when I have someone come on the table, you can tell people who actually do meditation or work in energy, like who do a lot of energy work, either if it's acupuncture, massage, that sort of thing, because what will happen is the energy, the Reiki energy will actually penetrate them a lot quicker than people who, maybe like myself, over 10 years ago, who had never had any Reiki or energy work or did meditation, because I definitely did not do that.
Yeah, no, time. you had that place, like that's how it usually is with life. There's a spark, and it's just until you get in the right setting, right people, right whatever environment, and then boom, that spark is a flame, right? Which is what happened to you. So you were. But just to go back a little bit to what you said, because you'd gone to university, so you were headed on a more academic kind of a lifestyle plan, and then so was it your because I want to tie in here what the different reasons why a person would choose to have a Reiki session, and what you weren't in pain, or you didn't have a physical anything. It was your sister's intuition, because she's very in tune probably with you as being a sister, but also her own psychic gifts, that it was about your life path that you needed to go. Am I right? It wasn't to do with a physical thing.
Yeah. She well, I was probably bugging her a lot too, because I was trying to figure out what to do, and she knew I needed some direction, and she kept saying, you know what, you should be working in the healing arts. And of course, at the time, when you're in your fourth year, you're like, that does not make sense. That, you know, that little corporate world was like my mentality, and I was like, that does not make sense. But I've always, you know, I always want to either help animals or help the elderly or like people. So I knew I'd always wanted to help people, but I didn't know what was going to be my medium to do that. So
no pun intended, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but she was very well aware that I could definitely do this. But the thing is, everyone has this ability to do it, and that's one thing I kind of want to mention. If you are kind of interested in learning about a different healing modality, and you're like, well, I don't really have any background, there's no one in my family who does this, don't let that stop you. Explore it, because you have this, everyone has this built-in ability to be intuitive and also to heal themselves, and to help channel this energy to help others. Because one thing with Reiki, now, Reiki is the word that they're calling it. That was rediscovered by Dr. Usui back in 1922. But if you look at other cultures, there's you mentioned about your friend who incorporates shamanism. If you look at all around the world, there's legends about healers, gurus who had these ability to have this light come through them and help heal others.
Right.
So Reiki is just another word for this, but it definitely has a long history. And they even talk about in the times, back in the biblical times, how people used to have this light around them. And they believe, one of the theories is that we used to always be connected to this universal energy field. But through a course of time, both got severed. So that's with Reiki. When you go in to study Reiki, you go through. You mentioned about attunements. There's an attunement process where we get the Reiki practitioner gets reconnected to that energy field, and that's how it allows that energy to kind of flow through the Reiki practitioner and into the client or patient on the table or on the chair. to receive the treatment.
So the person, the Reiki master or the Reiki practitioner, because they're not all masters, right?
That's correct.
So they are a facilitator. So like a vessel that is just because they're open to it, they are able to bring it through and then tune into where to put their hands and where to focus the energy because they're just allowing it. Right. So what I'm saying is that the person that's practicing Reiki doesn't have to be a master. Excuse me. They can just be called a Reiki practitioner. First of all, I want to correct that, make sure I'm right about that.
That's correct. There's 3 levels of Reiki. So you have level 1, which is introduction. You're not considered a Reiki practitioner, but you can still practice it, but you can't charge. And then you have level 2, which is a Reiki practitioner. And then there's level 3, which is master. But level 3 is kind of broken into 2 parts, and there's some debate about that right now. Some people teach the Reiki Master separate than Reiki Teacher, and that's the way I was taught. Some Reiki Master teachers may teach Reiki Master and Teacher all in one session. So I'm a member of the Canadian Reiki Association, and they're actually trying to have some guidelines around that, so that's universal for Canada.
That would be helpful for people to understand, yeah, because when we hear terms that we're not familiar with, and also I guess because of the day we live in, I mean, like you say, this has been back, thousands of years. It is our connection to source or God or whatever you want to call it. So obviously that doesn't really need a license. I mean, it comes through you. But when we're doing things, excuse me, with the public, it's helpful for the public to know what exactly is happening. And what I was wondering about is, so if I make an appointment to have a Reiki session, I am giving consent to have this. So you can't. Here's my point: you, as a facilitator, as a Reiki practitioner, wouldn't go out in the public and use this energy on someone that doesn't want it.
Yeah, you can't go around, and when I teach, I always say you can't go around zapping people with your Reiki. There's 2 principles of Reiki, and one of it is one, a person must ask for the treatment, and 2, there must be an exchange of energy. So the exchange of energy doesn't necessarily mean money, monetary. It could be a swap of service, which is very common in the healing. In any trade, really. But there has to be an equal balance of energy. And
but there's nothing wrong with getting paid for it either. Because a lot of people, that's the old way of thinking. And that's why we don't have enough people who stepping into these gifts. Because they think, oh, if I do that, I have to give up my day job and that pays the rent. And I like, when would you have time?
Well, and what's really good about Reiki, it's come a long way. I remember when I first started learning Reiki, my Reiki master, Sheila Earle, now unfortunately she has passed on, but she said, Tracy, this is going to be insured. Eventually it will be insured, and I'm actually, this year I'm hearing that there's some insurance companies that are starting to recognize Reiki as, so definitely check your policy. And down in the United States, another reason why I knew I wanted to be in Reiki, but I didn't know about whether or not to become a Reiki Master Teacher. But I know down in the United States, about 8 years ago, my uncle was actually diagnosed with I think it was stage 4 cancer. And part of his package was that he was able to access a Reiki practitioner to come to his home. Now, this was 8 years back in, down the States, and he said that was the one thing that actually gave him relief. And it was covered through his, I know they have different funding down the States, but it was, it was covered there, and down in the United States, it's definitely more covered than in Canada, but I think Canada's starting to catch up.
It's great news because it's a mindset.
Yeah,
right?
It definitely. Yes, and people are recognizing it, and even I work with a couple of. I'm very fortunate to work in a clinic where there's massage therapy, there's naturopathic doctors, there's a Chinese medicine there, and I feel very much at home. So it definitely helps complement other modalities. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll see in the next 5 years, it's going to be pretty much mainstream. It's not going to have that stigma, Reiki, what is that? But I think it's going to become more well-known.
Well, that's part of the reason I wanted to do this show. There's a few people, naturopathic doctors, who want to come on the show, and I definitely want to have that conversation with them. I've had chiropractors, I've had Chinese medicine and Chinese acupressure, Mongolian acupressure, and things like that. And because it's, I don't feel the need to have mainstream health practitioners on so much, because most people are familiar with that process. But the what we call alternative, which I find kind of humorous in a way, alternative, it was the primary, it was a basic primary thing that we really had. The traditional, what we're calling traditional medicine now, isn't really traditional. It is really the new, cutting into people, whereas some of the old ways weren't intrusive, they healed from the inside out, and that whole process. So I'm very interested in sharing more so that people can be empowered. And I like what you said about that anyone can, and I like to know what, when you say that, what do you mean anyone can do it?
Anyone, if you're looking to explore, the thing is, when we're put on this earth plane, we're meant to be happy, and that's one thing that we forget. And we're meant to be happy and live a joyous life. And people and I don't want to say underestimate, but sometimes you forget the gifts that are within you.
Right.
So it's trying to find out what modality, or even what technique do you really resonates with you, and start from there, because it may not even be Reiki. It may be acupuncture or acupressure, or reflexology that you want to kind of start looking into. And once you start doing that, and being aware of your body, because your body does speak to you. A lot of times when I'm doing energy work, Reiki or energy work, I will pick up on different, I'll give some feedback on what I'm picking up in their energy field. I'm like, do you like apples? Because all I sense is that you need to eat apples. And they're like, you know what? I love apples. I eat it all the time. So a lot of times we're already listening to our body. Mm-hmm. We just are not realizing it. Foods that you crave, healthy foods that you crave, is your body's way of kind of saying, this is the nourishment that I need. So the more in tune, and there's lots of books that you can read about listening to your body. But a lot of people, if you just start listening to your body, you'll know exactly how to course correct things just to help balance that mind, body, and spirit.
Well, the thing is, too, is not everyone is going to, we all have the ability, if we have two hands or even one hand, we have the ability to write or to paint or whatever, but not everyone wants to paint.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, that's true. You do have to be, but let's say if you want, I'll take that analogy. So let's say if you don't want to, paint or write, that's fine. You can always go buy a book. but just make sure you're making the decision of what book you're buying. Don't give that decision to someone else. Say, own your healing, because you are really in charge of your own healing. Now, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But when you seek out a practitioner, make sure that you're empowered, and don't give your power away, because you are in charge of your own healing.
That's a really good point, and I really like you to express that more, because I think as people understand what you said, the practitioner is a facilitator, the energy from source is coming through them. Is there a chance, because not to go into the negative, but I have heard of people who they're not, I don't know what the word is. They're not working from the best light when they're doing it. So how they're not clearing their energy. They're not doing that. So they're working on one person who has certain stuff, and they're not clearing their own stuff. And then they work on you. And so can you speak to that? Like how would I know if my practitioner is working with the energy in the highest optimum way?
Excellent question. With Reiki, I always say, and I'll use the analogy of a good haircut. When you go in, you should feel replenished. Now, you may go through a detox after that, but during the session, you should eventually feel this sense of inner calm and peacefulness. You should not have to worry about absorbing that Reiki practitioner's energy. It's the responsibility of the Reiki practitioner to make sure, if Reiki is being done in its true format, you should never have to worry about absorbing that person's energy, or vice versa. The Reiki practitioner should never absorb that energy. They should just be a cord between you and the universal energy or godlike energy. So what you should feel, and again, I don't want to have any expectations, because I do have people, 1/3 of people may not actually feel anything, but they'll feel a sense of calm. So I just want to mention that, because I do have a couple of clients who actually go, you know what, I don't feel anything on a physical level, but I feel calm. After a session, you should feel like you had a good haircut. You should feel good. You may be a little bit tired. You may need to go rest. You may go through a little detox period. But you should feel empowered by some way, just like if you had a good meditation session. If you're starting to feel like, let's say if I was giving, I'm just trying to think of how to word this. If I was saying, oh my goodness, I think something is horrible about to happen, if I'm starting to invoke fear, or if the Reiki practitioner is invoking fear, or if they start diagnosing, Reiki practitioners are not supposed to diagnose. They can say what they're sensing, but you should always feel good. It should be a really positive experience for yourself. If you do not have that positive experience, and when I mean positive experience, if the Reiki practitioner starts saying, you know what, I think you have a blockage, you need to go to your doctor, it could be this horrible disease, I would really say trust your inner guidance by that, because that's not what a Reiki session is about. When you leave, the Reiki practitioner should say, you know, do you have any questions? Generally the Reiki treatments, you'll get a Reiki treatment which will last anywhere from a half an hour to an hour. The energy of the Reiki will stay within your energy field between 4 to 7 days. I've had people say that it's lasted in their energy field for weeks, because again, it depends upon where your vibration's at. But you should really trust your inner guidance. And if you're trying to figure out if you're interested in learning more about Reiki and receiving a Reiki treatment, and definitely ask your friends. Now, a lot of people, if you have no one who's into Reiki, take a look at, if you're in Canada, the Canadian Reiki Association, they actually have a list of practitioners who are approved by the Canadian Reiki Association. However, always go by that inner guidance and do your research. Contact the Reiki practitioner and ask them some questions. Ask for references. It's no different than if you were trying to hire a contractor for your house. Do your research and ask around. It's your house. It's your energy field. So, but you should feel good after the session. And like I said, you may go through a detox. When I had my first treatment, the next day I thought I had the flu because I went through a really deep detox, and that's not uncommon.
And you're meant to drink a lot of water afterwards because it helps to.
Sorry, Catherine.
You're meant to drink a lot of water afterwards to help flush it.
Definitely, a lot. Very similar to a massage or any other energetic. Massage more physical level, but drink lots of water, herbal tea, and get plenty of rest. Mm-hmm. And I always recommend people going for a walk. Because walking, any sort of exercise is always good to help with grounding the energy.
But so would like some people, like you said, Reiki practitioners don't diagnose. But let's say I have been diagnosed with something, and then I come to you. Let's say I've been told I have, I don't know, anything really. I'm trying to think of something that's not cancer. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Anything, a digestive disorder, or maybe it is cancer, whatever. Something where the body is has a physical health problem. Now, can I go see a Reiki practitioner? And like you were talking about the mother with the fingers, but the doctor did sew it back on, but the mother helped facilitate that. So is that how you see Reiki for other health problems, issues?
Yes, I see it as very much complementary to other modalities, whether it's Western medicine, whether it's other massage, naturopathic. It's there to complement. And the beauty about Reiki is that it will not actually interfere with other treatment. Yeah. I have had people go, oh, I'm going to go off, and I'm like, medication. I never recommend that without consulting your physician. It's really there meant to be part of your medical system. In Halifax, for example, they have something called the Sunshine Room at the one of the hospitals here, and that's where cancer patients can actually go in and receive Reiki, healing touch, reflexology to help them with it while they're going through chemo. So it's definitely there just to help. And then I've had other people, Reiki has been very successful with people with insomnia, people who maybe have some joint issues. There's a lot, what's great is that there's a lot of research going on. And I don't know if you guys ever watch Dr. Oz, mm-hmm. but Dr. Oz actually have a Reiki practitioner or Reiki master while he does surgery. So if you ever Google Reiki and Dr. Oz, he has quite a few, he talks about it a lot, and I believe his wife is a Reiki Master Teacher.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about, we're starting to bring, like you say, complementary, it's helping. And then, there's other people, and it's up to each individual. Like, I would never tell someone who has any illness what is the best for them. They can decide that with their doctor or their healthcare provider. I mean, it is a choice, but I really am aware, and I think a lot of people watching this show probably are, is that what happens in our energy field will, if there's stuff in our energy field, pain, anger, trauma, it then shows up in our physical body. So if you can address it when it's in the energy field, then very often it doesn't manifest in the body. Now that's my understanding, but am I on the right track?
You're absolutely. There's in your energy field, there's different layers of. So basically, you have like a physical layer, and then you have an emotional level. So each layer of your energetic, your aura. So aura can be described as your own energy field that it's attached to each person. So you have sometimes when you go in and if you're trying to, one good thing to do is actually try to feel each other's energy, which is kind of hard to when I say that, I mean, like, if you kind of just hold your hand, anyone can do this, hold your hand until you can kind of feel heat or some sort of, could feel like a pulse to your friend, and just see how far your hand goes out. Now, the farther you go, the bigger their aura is. Now, keep in mind that your aura can change. It's like the weather in Nova Scotia. It can change every 5 minutes. So, but your aura kind of expands in and out.
Right.
And depending upon what's going on, so you have things that are going on the physical level, you can have things going on the emotional level, and then the spirit level. So there's more levels, but I won't go into that. But there's again a couple of really good books. There's one called Hands of Light by, I always have to double check this, just 1 second, by Barbara Brandon. She's a scientist, and she actually, I highly recommend this to all my readers, all my students. I don't know, this is a really good book, and it really breaks down about the energy field. So
Hands of Light, and what is her name again? Barbara?
Brennan, Brennan.
Okay.
She actually has her own school, and she's a very fascinating lady. She's been doing Reiki for quite some time. But she talks about, she brings her scientific background and is able to explain everything. It's almost like it gives context. It's not just light. We actually have measurements, scientific data that this is actually happening.
Mm-hmm. And it's coming more and more. A lot of science. I mean, Dr. Bruce Lipton is huge. I mean, he's can't get more of a scientist than that, and he brings that into the energy understandings. And there's plenty of other. It's starting to mesh. We're starting to see that we are more than just these bodies. So I think that's really important. And I wanted to, before, I don't want to run out of time here as we're chatting, but because, I know I'm going to want to have you come back, Tracy, because you just have such an interesting way of explaining, and it's a fun subject. But I wanted to just give you a chance to tell us about you and your sister have a radio show on the East Coast, and it's called what's it called? Eye of the East Coast? Eye of the East Coast?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Eye of the East Coast.
So can you tell, because you're doing your Reiki practice and you're affecting people that way, but you're also reaching out more to the world. And I will put the link on the video so people will know to check in with your video show, your radio show as well. But tell us about that. It sounds like it's very exciting.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, my sister and I, of course, we've been working with each other probably for the last 8 years. And before she started doing readings professionally, I was kind of like her manager. So we'd always get all these interesting questions from her. She calls her clients her seekers because they're always seeking out information. Right. So what we kind of thought was, why don't we start investigating all these questions that we're getting from people? And I thought, well, what better eye than an investigated eye? So that's where the Eye of the East Coast, and of course we had to put in that East Coast flavor. So we were actually, oh, thanks. So what we explore different topics, and some of the topics I am not educated on, so this is great because I'll ask a lot of questions, but a lot of questions come from the audience, and her seekers and my clients. So we really try to gear it around, let's take a topic, get an expert on the show, and let's explore that. And kind of discover it, because what we want to do, there's a lot of fear in certain topics. For example, the paranormal.
Right.
You know, if you hear a knock, what does that mean? Oh my goodness, you know. So what we wanted to do is kind of educate everyone, including myself, and remove that fear, so that you're empowered, and when you hear a knock, you're going to be like, okay, well, who is that, or what do I do? You'll know what to do. Mm-hmm. Or if you don't know what to do, you can connect, you can find out, okay, who do I connect with to arm myself with information so that I can, you know, take the fear out. So I always think of ourselves as little detectives.
I love that, because that's the big focus of my show too, is to transforming the fear, because fear is such a big obstacle for us to that I see as preventing us from living our best lives. It's, you know, it's the fear of the unknown. It's not the unknown because we don't know. It's the fear of it. It's the what we make up in our mind, like the boogeyman. You know, what's the boogeyman? And we're interesting as a species. You know, we actually pay money to sit down in a theater and buy popcorn to watch a movie to terrify ourselves and be as scared as can be, and then we hear, like you say, a bump in the night, and we're like, we don't want that. We want it in a safe. We want fear in a safe place. We are funny. So I like that you.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I like that you and your sister's name is Kelliena.
Yeah, Kelliena, and we have a website now. I kind of piggybacked on hers, but it's www.kelliena, KELLIENA.com. So she's always had this gift. I remember growing up, and she'd be like, "Oh, I see so and so," and I would be like, "Okay." She's trying to freak me out, right? So, as you know, because she's an older sister, but we're very close in age. And then our younger sister, she'd be like, okay, that's just Kelliena. But she always had this ability to see, and she honestly thought that everyone had this ability, and she didn't think she was any different. And she actually, I reach over here. She wrote a book called Psychic Beauty, Energy Cords and Psychic Exercises that you can get on Amazon.com. But she has some exercises for you to help train your intuition, and how she talks about her journey.
Kelliena's book? That's Kelliena's book?
Yeah, it's Kelliena's book.
Well, she's going to have to come on the show. She's just going to have to come on the show, and we're just going to have to talk to her about that. That would be
definitely, because she could.
Yeah.
She would love that.
Yeah, because, I mean, this is my whole focus, is to help people to really get the information and then be their own detectives, sift through the information, because a lot of people are starting to do it. I know it does take some effort, but, you know, once you have some of this information, your whole life will change. And I'm not saying that there won't be bumps. But in the end, it's freedom. It's freedom from fear, and that sense of really living why we came, like you said. And I believe that too. We're not here to suffer. We are here to, pain happens because we have physical bodies, but suffering is optional. I've heard that expression many times, and I totally agree.
I love that. I absolutely, yeah.
Well, I like the fact that Reiki is one of those tools that people can access now more easily, because before you would have to know somebody. You would have to know that woman that could do that to her son's hand. You would have to know her personally, and, you know, what are the chances? So it's nice that we have a Canadian body that is helping to regulate, so that we know we can access people all over this country.
Definitely, and for those who are listening in and watching the show, the Canadian Reiki Association, the website is www.reiki.ca, and again, it's just the Canadian Reiki Association, and you can check out with each of your province too, because some provinces do have their own association.
So is it a directory?
So it's definitely.
Does it have a listing of?
They do have a direct.
Wow.
They yeah, and now not all, right now in Canada, Reiki is not regulated. Mm-hmm. So at this point in time, although I do suspect, as with any professional profession, it will probably become regulated. I'm not just like reflexology is and massage therapy, in order to have to gain that more credibility.
And have insurance companies cover it and so forth, which makes sense too, But like you said, you don't have to, if you're not going to practice on the public, then you don't need that anyway. But, I just think that it's good for the public to know that this is available. But also, can I ask you, Tracy, do you work on people distantly, or do they have to come to your office?
I do distant Reiki, and the beauty of Reiki is that you can do distance. So I have done treatments, down in the United States, in different provinces as myself. So we do that. So that there's really no limitations to Reiki.
So if someone wants to work with you, they're watching the show today and they want to connect with you to have a session and they're not living in Halifax. If they're living in Halifax, I'd like you to give us both options. If they're living in Halifax and they want to, and they're watching this show, I'm saying, yoo-hoo! I'm so glad that you are, first of all. I know people in the Maritimes, and I hope you're watching. So, and besides that, I want you to let people know how they can connect with you wherever they are.
Oh, sir. You could definitely email me now at Reiki with a twist at gmail.com, and it's just Reiki, REIKI with a twist, and twist is exactly how it.
I'll put it right on the video here so people will have it.
Perfect. And you can also visit our website, www.Kelliena, KELLIENA.com. You'll see a link, Reiki with a twist. And the reason why I say Reiki with a twist is just because each Reiki practitioner does it a little bit differently, and sometimes I pick up messages. So I always say there's a twist with everything that you do, so should always put a little flavor in it. So your own flavor, I guess. So that's why I always say Reiki.
I love that. That's fantastic.
And you can definitely contact me. I do have. Okay, perfect. I should also mention, Catherine, there's a lot of good Reiki practitioners and Reiki masters who are not part of the Reiki Association. So I kind of want to mention that just because they're not part of the Reiki Association, there's a lot of gifted Reiki practitioners out there. So really, if you feel connected to them, definitely explore them a little bit further.
Yeah, we have to own our stuff. We have to own our decision making, and not just, I saw it on Let's Get Real Chattin with Catherine, or I saw, this person, somebody else went to. Yeah, I think it's great to talk to people and say, I had a really great experience. Then you go and you have an experience, and if you feel it feels right to you, then do it. And if it doesn't, then don't. Go or maybe even Reiki's not right for you. I mean, that's possible.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our chat today, Tracy, and I'm just feeling, I actually listened to you and your sister. I think it was your sister was giving predictions for the whole year, which were very cool. I listened to one of your shows, so I'm encouraging people to check you out, and I will put the link on the video so people will know where to go. But I look forward to exploring more with you because I think you're a very interesting person, and you have a really nice, balanced way of expressing the what I think. It's not complicated, but yet, you know what? We don't all know about it, so it's fun.
Well, and I always say, people's unusual experience is my normal, so it's going to be everyone's normal. So I really, Catherine, thank you so much for having me on the show. I think it's great what you're doing. Keep it up, and I would love to have you on our show if you are ever interested to explore what you're doing. I'd love to investigate your path, and maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You on our show at a later date.
Absolutely. I love to chat, that's what I love to do. And yes, it's always interesting when I'm in the other seat, how the conversation goes. But yes, it'll be a lot of fun. Well, I really appreciate you being with us, and I appreciate you for watching and for sharing the links, and all the links I'm going to be providing you. Share them with your friends if you think people want to know more about this. It's been awesome, and until next time, take care.
Great. Thank you.
Isn't that amazing? Thank you to my guests for sharing with us today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share the link. You can join us for live shows by going to letsgetrealchattinwithcatherine.com and listen to the replays from the show page, preview guests, and explore links to our Facebook fan page, WordPress blog, and more. We are creating an exquisite world. Until next time, take care.